Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Casey.
Kaila.
I'm Tori.
And I'm Josh. And today we are going to be going over a short story written by Zora Neale Hurston. Many people know her from the novel Their Eyes Were Watching God. But I was very impressed by this short story, and it really sparked a sense of thinking and emotion. And the work we're going over is Sweat.
Mm-hmm.
And the discussion starter I have for this is... Sykes-Jones is a low-life piece of trash. Would you agree?
Not a question, just a statement moving
To
on.
the point.
Yeah, no.
Would you like to read this?
Uh-oh. Nope, yep, that's exactly what it says. Ah! We had other words there. We had more colorful, questioning words there.
I
would agree
agree.
with both of them. Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of...
Elaborate?
Elaborate on what you were saying with the... It's very impressive what is done in such a short amount of work. Mm-hmm. The amount of character work that is so organically, developed with dialogue. It's such a wonderful way of using dialogue in such a short amount of time to show characters. Mm-hmm. It was great.
I don't like to use the word hate very much, but I hated him with a passion.
Yeah,
maybe
you're supposed
maybe the
to,
only
yeah.
one maybe the only fictional character in literature that I may hate more is
you were not
Bob
supposed
Buell
to
from
like
To Kill a
him.
Mockingbird.
No.
But
Yeah.
With Sykes-Jones, he's an absolute he's a bully. He does things just to deliver. He's
He's not cool.
He's lazy.
Yeah.
He's adulterous. He's abusive, both physically, emotionally, psychologically.
Verbally, he is the epitome of an abuser in every sense of the term.
He does. He kicks around. He knows, or at least should know by now, that Delia doing those laundry for the white people is their source of income, and what's paying for them to live in a house, and also for his hooker to live in a house.
His mistress, yeah.
Yeah.
His mistress.
It's but the fact that he's doing that is just signs of a bully.
Absolutely, and you don't know if it's coming from a place of guilt, or he's just that insidiously terrible of a person that he, beats her up and belittles her in such a fashion. But no matter what, he's this perfect villain, and he is written wonderfully where you just love to hate him, because he's that. Everybody knows at least some portion of him. There's some sort of emotional or tangible portion of this person that you're I know exactly who you are in my life.
The only thing I loved about him was when that snake got a hold of him.
Right? And that's what I was going to say, is that that comeuppance of, getting what he deserved.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that, you can place that person that you're thinking of,
you very quickly shift from oh, poor Delia to hell yeah,
And
Delia.
it backfired too, because he knew she was afraid of snakes, and he brought it in because he thought it was going to kill her. And the only reason he felt the need to kill her was because he didn't want to go off with Bertha and feel that he was...
Because he's a coward. Because
yeah.
he's a yellow-bellied coward, and is just the worst of the lowest of life of people.
He's immensely insecure, because he doesn't want to see her succeed, even when he himself is in a self-pleasing situation.
He is sin incarnate. He is every sin incarnate, and it's just... It makes the scene with the snake that much more, and you hate, I'm not the type of person who, wishes ill on type of people. He is the perfect character where he's created to be I want him to pay, I want him to suffer, I want that character, because again, he's the everyman of the bad guys.
But he created his own trap, too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't like she did anything to directly hurt him. It was just he put all the booby traps out there, and
his divine intervention.
She just
the
rushed outside, and he used up all the match. Actually, he brought the matches with him, and he left them at the motel or the little house.
Yeah.
So.
Like every step of the way, it was kind of this perfect domino effect of like all he had to do was like put the snake in, and it was kind of that, like I said, the domino tipped one over, and they all kind of created this flood of.
What are your thoughts, Casey?
Well, I read it a long time ago, so I vaguely remember it. But the one thing I believe, I don't know because I'm not the writer, what I think she wanted us to perceive is, because back in those days, divorce was
that was
taboo.
unheard of.
Yeah.
So when she saw her husband was bit, to her it was like, do I call the police or just let him die? Because that's my only way out of this situation.
And she's such a good person, like she wanted to help him.
Yeah, the writer wanted us to believe she let him die so she can get out of this situation without looking bad for getting a divorce.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so it was kind of like, because she hated the snake, and she hated the fact that she had the snake. He had the snake, but in the end she goes, oh, maybe it was a good idea, because this is what got me out of this relationship.
Divine gets out of there.
It was meant to knock one of them out.
Yeah.
And he thought it was going to be her, but it turned out that was not the case.
Yeah, it was almost even more deplorable to try and divorce or like get rid of your husband legally. For, especially if it was a woman to a man. If a man tried to like divorce his wife, like whatever, you know, she still kind of felt the heat for that. But being able to have something like that happen was like the biggest gift anybody could probably give you.
Another interesting thing is that this book is written from two perspectives. It's in third person, but it's from her perspective. And the perspective of some onlookers in the neighborhood that we see in the second part. We don't need Sykes's perspective because we already know. And
we don't want
according to us, we already know what we need to know.
Yeah,
but
and it would make him
humanize
him too much, and that's the last thing I think the author would want.
The initial response that I got was when they were talking about, when they were responding to why in the world did she get herself into this, that these people represented us as the readers.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
They were the onlooker.
But that started to fade a little bit when you saw them interacting with Sykes.
I think what's also important to note about that is that it points out too that we're often too quick to judge the relationship of others because we're not in that situation. Like in this situation, she had no signs that this would happen until they were already married. And I think it's important to note that because we don't ever know what somebody else is really going through.
And in a way, that's almost every abusive relationship is.
Oh,
they
absolutely.
seem like
it never starts off abusive.
And then it becomes, it's very subtle, and that shift is so gradual. It's the toad in the pot. You don't realize it's boiling until it's too late.
Right.
So it's just.
But they also lived in a time where you would look bad if you weren't married by a certain age.
Oh,
absolutely.
So she very well could have just got married because
the time, the heritage, the race, all of that needs to be like taken into consideration in the story.
There's a kind of almost a tradition for that. You know, that was the way things were done. That was what you were supposed to do, and
you just dealt with it.
Yeah.
I believe the snake was her way out.
Yep.
Again, a divine intervention. You know, the epitome of like sin kind of comes around and kind of almost
what goes
backwards
around
sort of way.
comes around.
But it's also it could continue. You know, like, because I wanted to see, well, what...
Yeah, did she
what happened to her?
survive?
Did she do anything?
Did she get through
did she, wait till the next day to say something? Like, what did she do? Because everyone's going to be asking, how did he die?
Because it was relatively, for such a violent end, it was a relatively quiet end.
Yeah.
Which was,
it
was very
it was like,
self-contained in that house.
dead,
The house that she kind of built and the life that she built, which she was trying to take away from her, like, he died in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Which is in its way like a very poetic justice.
Absolutely.
That's a good question of what did she do? Yeah. What actions did she take? That's fascinating.
And did he actually survive? You know?
Yeah.
Because that was also like, I'm assuming, that's what I said, I'm assuming the writer wanted us to assume he ended up dying.
Yeah.
I think with like the time period, it can probably be assumed they didn't have like the
especially if there was no,
especially
especially if there was no medical interference with.
Right.
And he went
And
after
they're
his face and neck, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how, expedient you brought somebody to the hospital, especially today, like in that time frame, unless you knew what kind of snake it was and you had that sort of antivenom on hand,
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
you're done. Like, he was not going to survive.
If the snake's intention, if Sykes intended that the snake kill Delia, then I think that there's a pretty good chance that if what the snake was doing to Sykes, it killed him.
Yeah.
But it is still open-ended. We can't say for sure,
Right.
but I think we can pretty much assume that that's the case.
I think by giving it that vignette of like a day in the life of, by what was it, like a 48-hour window basically you were shown in this short story from like stem to stern, like by giving it that open-endedness, it gives it that wonderful lived-in sensation of all these characters are real and all of these people are people that you could probably cross in the street, and this ridiculous thing happened in such a short amount of time, which I think just makes the story all that much more lovely. Which it's not a lovely topic, like it's definitely by far, but like I think it's written very well.
Do we have any final thoughts?
I think we basically hit everything.
Covered it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was a short story and it was done very well, and the characterization, especially using a third-person limited narrative by hopping from perspective to perspective in that way was great.
I think it was strong and solid. I think it really did a great job depicting what it was that it was trying to get itself out to. And it was so, I enjoyed it so much that a few days later I saw a shelf. There were a good handful of Zora Neale Hurston's books, and I got them all.
Yeah, I definitely would. I want to read more of her stuff. I'm highly certain. I was saying before we started filming, I swear I read this beforehand. We got to the halfway point, and then when she was like doing something with the laundry, I was like, "The snake.
This feels familiar.
I think I know what's happening with this snake."
Yeah.
And then I read it, and I was like, "Oh, I read this before. I've read this somewhere." So I think but it was still just as surprising, like reading it again, like, "Oh, dang." So, but it's that good, I think, where you're sitting there like, you might even guess what's going to happen, but it's still so satisfying because of how it's written so wonderfully that you're like, I want to read this again.
Okay. I definitely agree with that. And if
yeah.
you're interested in checking out Sweat by Zora Neale Hurston and some other great short stories by American women, here's the Dover Thrift Editions. Great short stories by American women. And we've gone over Life in the Iron Mills by Rebecca Harding Davis. We've gone over Smoke by Juna Barnes. And now we've gone over Sweat by Zora Neale Hurston. And I'm definitely inclined to go over more from this book of stories. Actually, we went over The Storm, too, by Kate Chopin, back in Season 5.
Another good one.
But
Lots of good stuff.
be sure to join us next time for another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.